John Talman here with Rivals.com and Nebraska head coach Scott Frost. Thanks for joining us. Let's start here with the pipeline camp today. And this is the first year of this offensive defensive line. How important is a camp like this, not just from a recruiting and an evaluation standpoint, but development of these players in Nebraska and surrounding states?
It's important for us. We want to recruit well in the state, definitely in the region. We're going to have to recruit nationally, but if there's a good player in the Midwest, we want to know about them and give them an opportunity to play here. I think it's also special to have a pipeline camp and have more camps that just focus on O&D line. That's been the bread and butter of Nebraska football in the great history of Nebraska football, the dominant O-lines and great D-linemen. There's a lot of 7-on-7 camps everywhere. There's a lot of opportunity for skilled players to show what they can do. There's probably fewer for O&D linemen, so we're happy to give any O&D lineman that wants to compete another opportunity.
You transitioned your entire staff from UCF to Nebraska. At UCF, a lot of maybe a regional recruiting emphasis. At Nebraska, it's more national. How has that transition been like when you guys focus on recruiting strategy?
Well, we got to go everywhere. I think we can get a good part of our team and probably the core of our team right here in the Midwest. Hopefully a lot of kids from the state. But we're going to have to go to a lot of different other places to fill out our recruiting classes and get the type of players that we need. So our coaches did a great job in the spring of going all over. We hit a bunch of different states, a lot of different high schools. Our guys have really worked hard to make sure that if there's a player that we think is good enough to play here, that they're familiar with us and they get an offer.
Going from that first recruiting class where you're kind of on a shortened timetable, did you guys change any recruiting strategy from, say, the last class to this class, or from year one to year two on how you guys recruit, just learning a little bit more about the area and the Big Ten?
Yeah, I don't know if we changed our strategy at all. It was just helpful to have more time. And I think the biggest difference in having a whole year was being able to get to know the kids that we were recruiting better. We just had to fast track it that first year and get the best players we could that were available. This past year, I'd say we were more selective and able to recruit players not just based on their play on the field, but also how we think they'd fit us and their character.
How has the state of Nebraska changed since, say, when you were recruited, or the challenge of getting an in-state player to go to Nebraska? I know there's so many kids that want to play, but is it different in terms of it maybe not being a slam dunk with some kids just because of Nebraska's kind of history in the past couple seasons?
I don't think it's changed. It probably changed a little before this staff got back here. But we're going to put an emphasis on Nebraska kids, and if there's one that we think is good enough to play here, we're going to make sure they're here.
You got a great one in Adrian Martinez. How do you manage quarterback recruiting moving forward, knowing you've got a couple more years with Adrian? To
be honest with you, I kind of feel like our track record with quarterbacks sells itself. The success quarterbacks have had in our offense, I think, sells itself. In my time in this offense, we had Darren Thomas that took us to a national championship, Marcus Mariota that won a Heisman, Vernon Adams that led the country in pass efficiency, Mackenzie Milton was one of the best players in the country, and now Adrian Martinez. And if there's a great player in our scheme, they're going to be a household name around the country, and I think that's going to help us get the most talented guy that we possibly can.
It's been a full year now. We have the transfer portal. It seems to be a hot topic. What are your thoughts on that, and how have you guys approached it?
Well, we're just trying to figure out that landscape and how that's going to work like everybody else. I think it's important for everybody to understand that I think people have been surprised by the transfer portal. There's a lot of kids in it, but a real low percentage of kids are leaving Power 5 schools and landing at other Power 5 schools. So I don't think it was quite a big a shuffling of the cards as people thought it was going to be. We certainly want every kid that comes here to finish here, to get their degree here and have a great experience. Inevitably, there's going to be some kids that leave here. There's going to be some kids that we want from other places. But I think it's in kids' best interest once they make a decision to stick it out. Just using myself as an example, I didn't play until my fourth year of college, and things worked out really well for me. And sometimes you got to be patient and put in the work to reap the rewards of what you're expecting to have happen.
And you've had a couple additions through transfer. What excites you about some of those guys that have transferred in recently?
Well, I think we had an opportunity to address a couple holes or a couple depth issues. Certainly losing Stanley last year, we felt like we needed some immediate help at receiver, and I think we were able to add there. I think having Darian on campus gives us some more depth and a good player on the D-line. He's also been an unbelievable leader for us. So we're not going to be a team that's going out and trying to add 6 or 7 players a year, but if there's an area in need or somebody special that pops up, we're going to do what we can to try to get them here.
I always want to ask, you're going out, you're trying to inject talent into your program, and obviously talent is super important, but how difficult it is, or how do you guys go about not just finding the right player from a talent aspect, but also that's going to be a good fit with the rest of the team?
You know, I think the way we recruit helps us get the right kind of kid. You know, we're not going to just be slick recruiters and go out and tell kids what they want to hear. We want kids to get to Lincoln, see what we're all about. We're going to show them exactly who we are and what we're all about. The type of kid that wants to come to Nebraska to play is usually a kid that's serious about it. If you're going to choose to leave someplace closer to home to come to Nebraska, then you probably recognize a lot of what makes Nebraska, Nebraska, the fact that there's really good men in this building that want to help them. This is a great place to come to focus on what's important, and that's faith and family and football and academics, and you know, having more time to recruit and get to know kids certainly helps us, but I think the way we recruit kind of does that on its own and helps make sure that we get the right kind of people.
You guys have had some success in recruiting in Arizona and New Jersey, and these are places historically, Nebraska, even when you were playing, have been very great talent pools to tap into. Is that a conscious effort to kind of go back to some states that you know that Nebraska's historically done well, or just finding happens to be those players and your staff has connections there?
Yeah, I think in this day and age in recruiting, there's less focus on areas than there used to be. You see everybody around the country recruiting a little more nationally. So if there's a good player, we're going to do everything we can to get them here. I think there's naturally some areas where the kids that grow up there probably fit Lincoln a little bit better, and that's probably the reason that some of those have been hotbeds for Nebraska. So when I played, just having Mike Brown from Arizona and the Peter brothers from New Jersey, there's been a lot more, but those were some of the key players on our teams, and there's a great track record from those 2 states of success at Nebraska.
One thing that's interesting, too, about recruiting is when you find a great player and then the position they may have come in at, that's not where they're ultimately going to end up for you. A guy like Cam Jurgens moving to center, how's that transition gone for a guy like Cam?
Well, we're going to recruit as elite an athlete as we can, and sometimes those guys end up where you think they were going to, and other times you look at him and think, man, he'd be nails somewhere else. And
right.
Cam's a good example. He came in and we were trying to decide whether to play him at outside linebacker or tight end, and it didn't take me very long watching him to see what he was and feel like he could be an elite center if we moved him. And he's had some injury issues, and we got to get him through that, but I have a lot of confidence in what he can become at that position. So we're going to try to put guys in the best place that we possibly can to help them get on the field and have success.
Finish up on this. You talked about last year, the turning point. You also talked about feeling good about where the program is going. As you sit here today, what excites you about this group going into this season?
Well, when I walk into the weight room and see what our team looks like, that excites me. When I see smiles on kids' faces and the effort that they're putting in because they love what they're doing, that excites me. We finished in a good place last year. We certainly went through a heck of a lot of pitfalls and bumps to get there. The key for us is to start where we left off, from a culture standpoint, from an attitude standpoint, and from a competitive standpoint. And we were a good enough team at the end of last year to play with or beat about anybody we played. We need to make sure we start there game 1.
Scott, thanks so much for your time.
I appreciate it.
You bet.